Okay, so we're going to be just talking about the law, about common law rights, and what this is involved. So this is our disclaimer here. I'm not a licensed lawyer. Goes for about 90 minutes, as I'm saying. And as I mentioned, like never before, we're at a time of major spiritual war, and like people really feeling the pressure right now and feeling the absolute squeeze right now what's going on in the world. And as people are saying, it's going to only increase. That's a summary of what we talked about before the recording started. That is a real squeeze happening, that society is really being pushed, and the pro-jab government, all society, businesses are really knuckling down and pushing in there. At the same time, our spiritual clearing work and people we're speaking to, there feels to be a change in the air, and people stepping up, pushing back, doing whatever they can do, basically. So this is not a time to be weak, not at all, not in any way, shape and form, because we are in a war. And I mentioned that in the Bhagavad Gita and in Yogananda's teachings, that in a time of spiritual darkness is where generally humanity steps up, or where spiritual teachers and leaders come and help humanity to step up. So generally great awakenings and great consciousness evolutions and shifts happen heavily when there's first a major consciousness spiritual awakening that starts to happen. So it starts to happen when humanity and civilization is in a very severe spiritual and moral darkness. And the moral darkness right now, it's fair to say, is at a pretty low ebb when you've got people being quite willing to coerce people into this kind of stuff and lock people out when it comes to their medical rights like this. It's certainly like something quite insane. So this was just a bit about me for those who haven't seen it before. So like I said, I'm just summarizing what I spoke about for the first 5 minutes before the recording. Okay, so we're at war. Our struggle is not flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. So absolutely, like, it's intense. And this is not a time, as I emphasize, to be mentally weak, to be mentally ignorant, and to be uneducated, and to not know what you're up against, and not to know what the agenda is, and not to know what to do to stand your ground and be able to move your way through this and get yourself and come out of this unscathed, or at least relatively sane. So definitely, as I mentioned in Yogananda's Second Coming of the Christ book, which I've been reading a lot of lately, he goes into a lot about Christ consciousness and higher spiritual teachings, and he explains about what he calls the dark kind of energies and what happen in the spiritual world, which infiltrate and which actually influence human authorities and governments and get people doing the kind of stuff they're doing. So it's quite interesting when you read this kind of stuff and understand that we really are. I mean, regardless of what your spiritual beliefs are or not, and keeping in mind, I have a very broad kind of view. For those who've noticed, I've read most of the religions, got the common traits and spiritual teachings. What's very clear is that you got, at the very least case scenario, a higher mind or higher way of thinking versus a very low, inferior, kind of oppressive, coercive way of thinking. So what you've got is our life, safety, and freedom gets really threatened. And like I said, generally when humanity and when society or civilization goes into a huge moral decline, that's when people are called to rise up, and generally we get what's called a forced awakening. Over the last 20, 30 years especially, there's been such a push by so many spiritual teachers, other like economic teachers, to warn humanity of an economic crash that was pending, to warn of a loss of freedoms and rights. Myself and many others that I've met were sharing this kind of stuff, but really most people didn't particularly wish to listen. They just wanted to continue going on. And we all get guilty of that. We get caught up with wanting net worth. We get caught up with our own little way of doing things. We get caught up with wishing to stay within our comfort zone. And eventually, the forced awakening hits, and one can only hope now that society will get the message. And the fact that so many people are attending these classes now like never before, and other kind of training, show people are starting to get the message. And certainly now is the time to be empowered and be able to push back. And just keep in mind that over the next 3 to 6 months, this is where the ugly truth sometimes has to be told. You're going to see people fall like dominoes left, right, and centre. People who are many of what you would think was strong and very clear in what they believe in will basically fall to the agenda and fall to it because of the pressure and the sustained pressure. So being able to stay within your truth and stay relatively strong and be relatively empowered and have understanding of what's going on is going to literally put you well ahead of the game. And this is one of the reasons why I'm doing these sovereign individual events for free. And while we're doing these paid, I did a paid 2-day event a few weeks ago. And while we'll be doing 1-day events on September, October, November, one that will be on this stuff, common law rights, and helping you understand them and how to stand within them and know your legal freedoms and know how to be able to work things out for yourself and know how to basically withstand spiritual war. Because we said that's the number one thing to be sovereignty is having that headspace and mental toughness and common law freedoms understanding. And the second thing in October, we had to create and grow your income and wealth. So you got really good financial sustainability. And you're not going to, and then most importantly, in November, how to protect your hard-earned wealth so you don't end up being one of those people who basically will own nothing and yet be happy, so to speak. So yeah, look, there's change coming, and overall, people are toughening up and changing. So people are quick to give up their hard-earned rights, but let's rest assured that everyone here, hopefully, I'm trusting, are not one of them. And you're here to learn, you're here to be empowered, you're here to be strong. So sovereignty is all about self-empowerment, where you really are completely 100% self-empowered, where you have the right and power for yourself. So where you have the right, you have the power, you have the freedom and everything of that kind to be educated and make your own decisions, and especially about your finances, about your life and your life choices. So many of you have heard in my previous webinars, The Art of War by Sun Tzu, in many of the Tao teachings, they use this. So planning for what it is difficult while it is easy, doing what is great while it is small. So these are the kind of things to be doing right now around finances and things like that. I'm preparing for a lot of things. I'm expecting that many businesses I frequent, some I'm expecting will just get on with life and stand firm. Many businesses I can see, but I'm seeing now will probably withstand and buckle to the pressure. So I'm planning for that now and understanding that and really doing what, as I was saying today to one of my friends, who I said, look at the bears and look at the birds, look at the squirrels, look at the crocodiles. They all prepare for winter seasons and they hibernate. So this is about very much getting yourself strong, preparing yourself and making sure you're in very good health physically, mentally, and emotionally. This is not a time and season to be in poor health, and I'm sure you would agree. This is a time to be in very good health, and having a scared, frightened, weakened mindset is the fastest way to get really sick. So fighting is one way. I mean, it's one thing to withstand in a war and take stands. That's why my approach, as many of you know, the way I approach war is I don't really fight. As soon as I see someone in our group is misbehaving, I don't argue with them, I just kick them out. It's just very straightforward. As soon as I could foresee problems in my profession when I was a lawyer and when I was an accountant, I just walked away from my license and found a way around it. And I worked out a way, because the truth is, you'd be amazed at how much power you've got. You'd be amazed how many options that you've got when you let go of your fear, you let go of your limited linear thinking and realize that there's so many ways to think outside the box. And there's always a way to win the war. There's always a way to get through any enemy without necessarily in any way having to fight. So that's how we see this here. It's most important to outthink your enemy than to fight your enemy. So getting yourself worked up, caught in a fight, and getting yourself all overwhelmed and all like, I'm going to run and do this sort of stuff, it just doesn't work, you know? And I was actually talking to a political candidate yesterday, someone running into politics, and you know, it was really interesting to talk to him because he's probably the first guy I've met in that arena who I found we thought very similarly. And he even said to me, he goes, I really don't see the point of going to most of the protests, because he says right now we're greatly outnumbered and it gives people false hope that we can make a difference by doing that. He goes, I don't believe we can. He said, the reason I like what you're doing is, he said, you're actually doing something I think that possibly can make a difference, because you're teaching people stuff that can self-empower them and learn to stand up. And he said that's the only way, is getting people empowered and getting people educated and getting people to make their own choices and bringing unity and alliance among the smaller parties. So he was a really good guy. And I said I could not agree with you more. And as I said to him, if you've got a city of, say, 2 million people and you've got, like, say, even 5,000 at a protest, you've got like one or something like one in every, one basically in every 450 or something people. So it's not an awful lot. So it's important to think strategically, outthink your enemy than to outfight. Sometimes we need to lose the small battles in order to win the war. That's why I really don't get myself worked up on small battles. And I usually end up winning them anyway, but I just don't get myself worked up. And I mean by small battles, things that don't matter as much. Like, for example, the census. That's one I noticed a lot of people got worked up about. And as I told people, I said, it's just not a big issue. I don't like doing surveys, so I just didn't bother doing it and just got on with life. If they happen to serve me a legal notice and go all out, well, I'll probably just do it. It's not a big deal. But unless they do that, I'm just going to get on with life. I've got better things to do than fill out that silly form, which takes a long time. So by contrast, there are really important battles to win right now. So tonight, I'm going to hopefully touch on some of the real, what I call enemies, or things that have to be addressed and dealt with. This is very interesting because I had a situation just recently where I had someone come around our door about something, and I was just very chilled and very relaxed and just kind of talked as if I didn't really go into much detail. I never let people know when I'm actually dealing with any kind of government official, anything else, that I know what I know. I act like I'm just a very normal guy, and I don't answer anything unless I have to. So most people don't take me too seriously. And believe you me, that's the best way to win battles of this kind right now. Going in to go and fight and things like that is the fastest way to get yourself losing and getting yourself into a lot of trouble. So it's a good time to get really educated. And if anything around your friends and family, I would be saying right now, almost play a bit dumb. Many people I know are running around trying to be the great warrior, saying don't do this, don't do that. And in many ways, you're better off to almost play the weak person of the family, and just kind of seeming on the surface but just giving what's called very humble responses. Howard Freeman, who I'll share with you shortly, one of the greatest freedom teachers and warriors I've just ever come across, he says that we want to be sheep among wolves. So Jesus said to be sheep among wolves, which means you literally like this passive lamb that doesn't have much strength. And Howard Freeman said he used to have judges and courts say to him, Mr. Freeman, you are so interesting. You just seem like you are an absolute nothing. So I was fortunate enough to learn from Howard Freeman's teachings early on when I was doing this kind of work. So Howard Freeman says, never walk in there. It's a bit like in martial arts. They teach you the worst thing you can do as a black belt is walk among a group of kids and say, hey, man, I'm a black belt. I mean, the first thing they want to do is fight you. Whereas the best thing to do is play really dumb and kind of play very meek and say, look, guys, I don't want to fight. There's no need to fight. And friends I know who are very advanced in martial arts are like that. They actually play very meek, and they rarely get into fights because of that. They don't play the big I'm strong, but they know if they need to, they've got that card to pull out. So this is the kind of what I call wisdom or mindset thinking right now that's going to really help you to make a real difference with your family and people around you. So who here resonates to that so far? Surely, wise as a serpent and innocent as a dove. Exactly. That's what Howard Freeman used to quote. That's what Yeshua says, and Howard Freeman quoted him, wise as a serpent, innocent as a dove. In other words, like a really simple, guy, It's like some would say, I want to be the guy that, takes down this government. I don't want to be the guy who takes down any government. I just want to be the simple guy who no one knows a lot about, who teaches people stuff, and people get empowered and rise up and then see the country transform. I'd rather be that guy. It's a much easier role to play and a much more realistic approach to actually do. Because there's no doubt, and this is what I call Ugly Truth Day, and it's good to see ugly truth. We're heading for a major collapse and volatility in our economic systems over the coming few years. A lot of money to be made if you know what you're doing, and a lot of money to be lost if you don't know what you're doing. And if you're holding on to the old way of doing it, I see people losing a lot of money. Someone quoted in here that many businesses are going bankrupt in Chicago. And no doubt about that. I'm hearing businesses, I don't even think we've hit the full carnage yet. Australia, 2022, I shudder to think how many companies are going to go bankrupt next year. I shudder. Businesses shutting down everywhere, It's going to be a lot. So, and you can't keep locking down and being and doing what you're doing with this economy, especially New South Wales, without significant impact, especially as most people barely live, week to week and payday to payday. So you've then also got supply chain breakdowns. I mean, lockdown means that trucks move slower, things move slower internationally. There's every chance that in the coming year or two that you're going to see periods of time where things that you've ordered from overseas are going to take some time to arrive. So that's why we're going more local produce wherever possible. Yeah, and prices of many things has gone up exponentially as it's harder to get hold of, there's more demand for certain things. Yeah, absolutely. There's, I say artificial because we don't really have a food shortage, certainly not in Australia. We don't have a problem here at all. But sometimes governments find ways to create artificial food shortages, and do shit like that. And as you said, so things like that. So someone said, I'm a landlord and have renters who owe me 19 months rent, things like that. Yeah, look, you've got that. And then you got renters who literally can't pay and whose landlords are being totally unreasonable, I find the conscious, smart landlords are generally sitting with their tenants and finding a workable way for both parties. And that seems to work really, really well. So, you got this kind of stuff. I'm sure you've heard about, some are talking about a possible cyber pandemic, which could happen electricity-wise. I expect the pressure on this to go up a lot the next 3 months. We haven't even seen the full push of the pressure yet because as yet, they still acknowledge that there hasn't been enough vaccines and everyone having the opportunity to do it. But by the end of the year, everyone will have had the opportunity or early next year. So that's when it's going to get really, really interesting and where one can expect very strong pressure in the workplaces, insurance companies especially. I see the biggest threat for business insurance companies. I'd be surprised if the government made a blanket mandate for it, but you just don't know in this climate. I'm not predicting they will, but I'm predicting that many businesses will do it. Governments will do more limited for their federal, aged care and stuff like that. But in saying that, when you've got very large corporations employing most people, you can definitely, if businesses and insurance companies, and then you've got APRA, who regulate the health industry, you could have 80% of people being heavily coerced. So this is where the only chance you've got, the only chance is to be sovereign, and where you've broken your attachments completely. So it's just about like you're self-sufficient, that you're not dependent on this system, which they've built up very cleverly to get everyone very, very dependent on a worldwide grid or energetic system, and then turn around and say, right, now to continue to participate in the system, you are going to have this, and this. So that's what we're dealing with. So this is kind of an awakening call to get self-sustaining really quickly in some form. And of course, I think we're only a matter of a couple of years to a few years before we start seeing this becoming part of the agenda. That once they've got people getting used to having every 6 months having needles put into them, this is not that far off the radar where they start doing this and require this to ensure tracking. In the same way they track their food, in the same way they track their animals. This is where I'm being a bit more open and blunt tonight with everyone. I mean, I did a lot of study in underground off-the-grid movements and meeting guys who are secret, very high-level world secret agents, very top-level people who even knew some of the top politicians in the world who'd broken in, showed me deleted history books and everything else. And basically from what I learned many, many years ago, to my misfortune in a way at the time, and because right now people are listening and are ready, but back then no one was by and large the people behind this world order and bringing everything in together. They view everyone, they're called the Khazarians, and they view everyone who's not their race as basically goyim or cattle to be branded, to be chipped, and to be sold and slaved. And that's why they set up birth certificate systems and passports and things like that to basically give people, to track people in the same way you track your dog, you sterilize your dog, and you put them, and many people choose to microchip their dog and things like that. It's the same kind of deal as how they see people. So this is definitely heading for a totalitarian world order like never before. I mean, Australia right now is seen as a laughingstock of the rest of the world in the East Coast. And like I said, though, these things can be brutal, can be quick, but can come to an end relatively quickly as people get their empowerment, break their things, and have the strength to withstand a siege for a period and for a time. Because things don't go forever, like they just don't. So that's what's important to realize. They don't actually go, forever. And as someone says here, yeah, they're already admitting that the vaccines or the jabs, within 6 months, the mRNA don't work anymore. So now they're saying everyone has to have them every 6 months. I was talking to doctors who said every single animal, any trial of animals over the last 20 years, generally they died or, didn't get too well from it. So there's just all that kind of stuff going on. So not a time to be weak, not a time to be nice or anything like that. It's just a time to be very strong, very clear, and ready to, stand up and do what's right for you and for your family, to separate yourself from all that's going on. And, I even limit a lot of my news and social media right now. Just don't listen to a lot. And what people can message me, as many of you know. I mean, is there anyone here who hasn't been to one of my webinars before? Or has everyone here been before? Just so I can get a bit of an idea. Okay, everyone's been here. A couple of people are new. Okay, wow. So there's a few newies here. Well, lovely to meet all of you. So, yes, I've done quite a lot of them. So, oh, wow, there's quite a few new. Well, it's lovely to come across you, and thank you for coming, and many regulars as well. Those who are new, I'm just curious how you found us. So, okay, yep, few people have been invited. So, well, thank you for coming. Like I said, our YouTube channel on the Awakening Within and Global Wealth Club have quite a lot of our past recordings, including our Lawful Rights series, where I was teaching common law and things like that. And, of course, we had an event a few weeks ago. So really lovely to meet all of you. So, so thank you, everyone. Very kind. And people saying they're grateful, well, thank you. So, yeah, well, look, we all need... it's kind of funny. One thing I'll be honest to everyone. I remember when I first learnt this stuff 18 years ago, I went through a pretty dark time about 4 years ago. And I actually said to people around me, I said, I know all this stuff about the underground and everything like that. At the end of the day, it's all a big waste of time, because I said it doesn't do anything. I know all this stuff, but who gives a crap? I mean, hardly anyone. And now I'm sort of sitting there chuckling to myself because everyone wants to hear it now. So it's funny how everything has its time and its place and its synchronicity. And as I've learned from that, everything has its purpose. And, there's so much which I was shown in that, which I still haven't really shared with anyone. So I have a feeling over next year at our events, I'll be sharing more of the stuff which I've learned and how we can actually understand how the world really works and, win it back, sort of thing. So one of the things I said was to, perfect timing, it says. So Daniela, the more I learn about the dark forces, the more purposeful. Yeah, look, it's just, I've always tried to take a very pragmatic approach to what's going on. And on the one hand, I think that many religions are completely linear and have missed the whole boat. At the same time, what's called a purely, linear scientific approach also misses the point. Whereas the correct solution is emerging in kind of understanding of religion and science to really get an understanding of this quantum spiritual realm, which exists in various dimensions that we're dealing with, but at the same time, dealing with practical 3D Earth that we're living in. So I thought I would share today a little bit about a couple of very useful references I learned from The Law by Frederick Bastiat and the UCC Connection, and just a few things about common law rights. And I'm actually excited. There's one thing I'll share with you today, which you probably know already, but you may not know about how these medical boards and how these things really, really work. Drew says he met me at the Kevin Nations event in Las Vegas. I've actually never went to his event, Drew, in Las Vegas, but I was at Toby Alexander's, and I think I was once on a webinar with Kevin Nations, but that's it. So, okay, so those of you who've been before would know the order of creation that I've taught. So yeah, the God, man, women, sovereign, this is the order of creation. And this is something which I keep reminding myself, all the time. I keep reminding myself of this, that ultimately we are sovereigns basically under God or the infinite intelligent mind or the higher mind, however we want to see that. We are all sovereigns under God and under higher creation and creator law. And then in turn, we create the governments and we've got persons. Now, what we're dealing with is a deep state or corporate takeover or hijack. Now, just keep in mind that the corporate takeovers that we're dealing with, so to speak, many of you would probably know, but not all of you would know. I'm presuming you realize that most of our governments now are quasi-corporations. They're not actually what true democratic governments anymore. So we used to have like the Crown, like in West Australian each state government, which was basically the Crown or the Commonwealth, which was a wealth common to the people, like a democratic government. But over the last 20 years, or to 30 years, every single state government and the federal has been pretty much in secret taken or superseded by corporates. I'm sure you would probably know, but if you look up the Australian, Commonwealth of Australia, they're actually registered at Washington SEC or Securities Commission. I'm presuming that, so Suzanne, is the Australian government listed on the New York Stock Exchange? It's listed on the Securities Exchange Corporation, which is basically the company's registration authority. So keep in mind, the whole world is a series of quasi-corporation. The word corporation actually means dead entity, like a soulless entity. So generally, that's what you're dealing with now: soulless corporations, soulless entities, and ultimately, one of my friends actually went and studied, who's a really good investigative studier. And he found 87% of Australia's public companies and major big businesses were owned by shadow corporations in the Caymans and offshore, and generally the same ones, and they could not trace who owned them. They found nearly all the properties and real estate in just about every major city was always controlled by a small group of families in a city, and most of them they found were either associated with the foreign bankers, with Satanism or stuff like that. So, like I said, must be the time and the place, because I don't really share this kind of stuff this openly normally. But yeah, so the Vatican, like, for example, the Vatican owns almost more real estate than almost anywhere else in just about every major city. It's and it owns through hidden kind of stuff as well. So hidden shadow corporations where they have blind trust to protect the owners, so you can't really find them too easily. And being a lawyer myself, or former lawyer, I'm very aware of blind trusts. So you've got these series of corporations and series of quasi-corporations that own everything. The Australian Tax Office, the IRS, they're actually these quasi kind of corporations that don't really have any proper legal identity as such. So you're dealing with this very kind of coercive kind of government system. And Bastiat the law talks a lot about this kind of stuff. So this is why I got him up. And I'm going to go through some quotes. And before I do, just to continue on this quasi-corporation, this is a graph of the City of London. There's a small little separate spot here. And this is a legally separate corporation that is separate from the rest of England and the common law. Now, I've shared about this previously, but the City of London is a separate corporate identity. This very small little part of London where all the banks, the Rothschilds banks, the major corporate, and the bar, for example, the Legal Barristers Board is also a corporate, a quasi-government statutory corporation controlled and owned, or corporation sole owned by the City of London. So most of the major law societies in the world are owned by this group. Most of them are owned by this particular group. Most of the medical boards are indirectly owned by this group. I'm just curious, who's completely did not realize that before? Who didn't realize that most of these regulatory boards are not actually owned by government, but they're actually owned by these corporate identities? I'm just curious. Yeah, so if you didn't know. Yeah, so once you know that, it actually helps you in dealing with them and knowing how to find your power in certain situations. And a very good example is this. I was saying to a couple of my chiropractors who I know who are very nervous about being forced to take this by the fact that they're APRA actually regulate it, Australian Health Practitioners Regulatory Authority. And I said, well, you realize that you don't have to be registered with APRA to continue to treat people, don't you? And of course, you can see that it's been a real struggle for them to get their mind around. Well, I can't do this and, I can't touch people. I'm saying, well, that's not actually true. And when I showed them why, they were kind of a bit dumbfounded. So the point is, there's a lot of rights, and you're just going to have to start looking at things and what's called your attachments and ties right now, because they're the things that are going to get you into trouble. Many people right now who are suffering and struggling a lot with this, it's things like their job, their profession, the pressure they'll get on those. That's one thing. Also, their family members and things like that. It's those kind of attachments and those things that you've got, but are what I call the really big challenge that many people are facing right now. So the City of London, and the reason it came about was until 1666, England was free of the Rothschilds for quite some time. And then the City of London, the 1666 Fire of London Rothschilds, a corporation was set up, Lord Mayor in charge, and it became a sovereign separate city to the rest of England. So this Fire of London basically burnt up London. It was started by people associated with the Rothschilds, and basically in the ruin, they created a problem, came up with a solution, and the City of London was formed. And the idea was that, hey, we'll give you the funding to rebuild London if you give us this sovereignty within the country. So he or she has the money, as Rothschild said. I don't care who makes their laws if I control their money supply. That was a famous statement by Rothschild. So this is the City of London, and the thing that you see when you're coming in, this lovely little dragon thing. And you've got these kind of veiled references in the book of Revelation, which when you go and you look into this one, it talks about this dragon here, and you see about the dragon authority. So the ancient dragon, there's used in this context, is talking about a dark energy or lower mind energy or frequency that's used to basically control people or things like that. And this is a whole major, this is a whole teaching in itself. So the point is, though, they're heading towards this kind of system, as Jim Rickards, the economic commentator, says, and he says he's not religious, but he said you can't deny the fact that whoever's behind this is pretty much implementing Revelation to the letter. And they're looking to build an eventual system where no one can buy or sell who doesn't have some kind of internal microchip. So this is a purely secular, non-religious commentator that has said this is where he sees this heading, and really encouraging people to be doing all the steps to get themselves very sovereign right now. So as I mentioned, the bar, which is the barristers' board, and every major legal practice fraternity is owned by this City of London. So it's really a very big matrix to unravel. And I'm sharing this with you because this is not something you're going to walk away from this webinar and know overnight how to do this. This is something that you've got to start unraveling yourself from the matrix and the system relatively quickly, but you've got to do it in stages. There's still time to unravel yourself, but the time is really fast running out. And there's going to come a point in time in the near future where if you're not completely unraveled from the matrix, you are going to have your financial decisions made for you, basically by whether you take a needle or not, or whether you get a microchip, or whether you continue to do good social systems and you meet social credit systems. This is a kind of system that's coming in right now. And in parts of the world and in parts of Australia for a time, it's very likely we will see this happen. And so being able to unravel yourself from that system is still very possible right now, but time is running out. So the point I'm saying, so this is probably the strongest statement or warning I've given on this one, just to say to people that the best thing you can do when you're feeling pressured, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling a bit scared, is take action and get educated. Watch webinars, watch more webinars, get educated, take steps to separate yourself from what's going on. This is why I left the bar. In fact, there's a very funny story of me. In 2003, when I first learned all this in the underground movement, I first learned it in 2001, and I actually wrote them a long letter trying to withdraw from the bar and break all ties with the City of London and the corporate status. Now, they didn't know what on earth hit. They were ringing me like, what on earth is this letter about? And eventually, though, I got this inner intuition that I had to stay there for a time because I had some lessons to learn. I'm glad I did. I stayed being a lawyer for another 12 or 13 years. I had various run-ins with our legal practice board and fraternity, a bit like Serena Tahafa, who many of you have heard. I had some run-ins with them over a few years. Won many of them, but I had a couple of little challenges. And then I decided to resign and just walk away from the whole thing on my own accord on good terms with them. And I did. You know, we left and I left on good terms with them. But I got myself away from that one. There's a really good scripture, again, and I'm only using Revelation because whoever's doing all this crap seems to have just picked up the book of Revelation, had a look at it and think, this looks like a really good idea. And they've just gone ahead and copied a lot of it. Like, it's quite freaky when you see how much of the book of Revelation is happening in real life. So whether was a prophecy that was given that would have come to pass, or whether it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, I mean, that's just a matter of conjecture. The Freemasons, as someone says from Shirley, Freemasonry is Judaism, and many of the religious churches are all branches in one tree. Yeah, well, I would agree. I mean, many of the Freemasonry take the Old Testament, which has got some powerful sacred geometry and spiritual tools, and they use them to misuse things and control energy grids and all kinds of stuff. So, and most churches are caught up in that, unfortunately. Very few are not. My church was not caught up in it, and we went through a bit of a challenge at one stage because of that. So they certainly don't like it when you break away from the agenda. And we did as a church, I did as a lawyer, I broke away from the agenda, and I end up with all kinds of, challenges and various audits and various things like that, which I had to go through, which at the time wasn't all that much fun. Going through various tax audits, going through various legal practice board audits, going through various other things. I started to think I was just some kind of cursed individual. But I eventually realized it was because I was standing my ground and I was aware of everything that was going on. So once I was able to actually realize that and see it as a lesson and a blessing, it was really, really great. So just realize that whoever's doing all this shit is really awakened to spiritual laws. They're really awakened to higher truths, and they know how to misuse them against people. They actually do. That's why the mystery schools were so protective of the ancient secrets and technologies to avoid them getting into the wrong hands. That's why Yeshua says in the Bible, and why the Bhagavad Gita says, don't cast your pearls or deepest secrets before swine or pigs. In the Gnostic teaching, they teach that as well. That's why certain of our secrets and teachings I don't reveal to people very lightly at all, because I know they could be misused. So this is the one here where it talks about Revelation. And I heard a voice come from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins and you don't receive of her plagues. In other words, get your ass out of there before you are caught in this matrix and this dark spiritual vortex where your finances, your mental health, your everything are dependent upon this completely fucked up system. That's the warning here. For her sins have reached to heaven as God has remembered her iniquities. I mean, things like this will always have their day in court. They'll reap what they sow. They'll get their karma. But the wheels of karma can take a long time to turn on these sort of things. It can take a long, long time. And Catherine says the days of Sodom and Gomorrah. Yeah, when you actually read the ancient history books and like Joshua and that, like I go right into history books and every book I can find, and the ancient scrolls. The times of Sodom and Gomorrah, the Bible hardly mentions them, but they were a civilization that was actually very prosperous, like very, very prosperous, very, very abundant civilization. And then their prosperity got to their head. They started becoming incredibly oppressive with their wealth. They started withholding sustainability from the poor. They perverted the justice system. They started forcing people into all kinds of atrocities, and eventually they got destroyed. And they got destroyed because inevitably when a society goes completely into moral decay, or eventually all the energies and the forces of nature reverse against them. That's what happened with Sodom and Gomorrah as I read it. Wasn't that, that God was sitting there in heaven and went and threw a rain bucket on them. It was just simply like higher councils, higher governances, higher orders that oversee what goes on, just said enough's enough. It's time to let, nature balance out its course. And that's all we're seeing in Australia right now, in America. We're seeing a very, very decadent, spiritually, morally, mentally lazy, apathetic, morally weak Western society where net worth is pervaded over self-worth, now starting to, unfortunately, reap what it sowed and moving towards a forced awakening and reaping what we sowed. And it's a good time to come out of this matrix and re-find our power and get back in life to what's really important right now. So, and it will come to an end. It says here that she's glorified herself. She's lived deliciously. So she will receive torment and sorrow. Her plagues come one day. I mean, the whole thing will come tumbling down and we'll see a whole new consciousness age. But in what form or how it will happen, I don't know. It's time will tell. Another very interesting scroll that was written a long time ago was this one here. It says, I think it's 51 or 52. Let me have a look. Yes, it's 52. So these were written to people who were caught up in the Babylonian captivity, and Revelation is talking about new spiritual Babylon captivity. So, so it talks about here. It says, depart, go out from her. So this was actually a call to people who were not meant to be part of his system to get your asses out of his system, the Babylonian kind of moral decadence and the moral financial system. Get yourself out and leave it. So that's kind of what I'm seeing happening here right now, to get yourself out. And this is what Howard Freeman, one of the great awakening teachers of the 70s and 80s, used to talk about. Howard Freeman's the only man I've found, apart from in America, and I've met others in New Zealand who walked away from the tax system and it was considered that it didn't apply to them. They worked out their way through the matrix. But yeah, so the medical board as well. These are all regulatory boards that people voluntarily put themselves under. And what these things know is the best way to control a nation is to get you by consent. Even if it's coercion, if you consent to something, as you're about to see in uniform commercial law, and you don't stand up and do something about it, you have consented. And it's a very good way, you've consented. So if you, for example, go and join the medical board as a doctor, you take on this benefits, you take the revenue, you take the privileges, you get the right to charge high amounts, you take the Medicare subsidies, guess what? You're taking their money, you're taking their poison chalice, so to speak, so you've now got to obey whatever the rules are that goes with it. That's how the medical system works. It's the same with the bar, and I realised this, for me to have the right to charge large law fees and do this kind of stuff and tell everyone I was a lawyer, I was scared when I stopped being a lawyer was that people wouldn't take me as seriously. The weird thing was, I've realised when I tell people I'm a qualified lawyer who used to be licensed, not anymore, I've virtually never met anyone who thinks less of me, and usually people think more of me. But yet that was a real fear of mine. When I stopped being an accountant, licensed myself, I thought the same thing. But then I found that I could contract back into a licensed accounting firm, which my business partner and I run, and I could do it in a way where it wouldn't affect my rights and freedoms. And just about everything I worked a way around, and I paid good lawyers to get around it. And I paid good lawyers to make sure of this kind of stuff, and I eventually realised something which I'll be showing you. So the medical board investigations, yes, they got the right to investigate you, if, you are a registered doctor and you've submitted to them. If they pay you welfare or Centrelink or Social Security or healthcare stuff, guess what? If they're paying you money, they have got the right to choose who they give it to. It's like if I decide to start giving out sponsorships or grants in my business, I can choose who I give it to. And this is what people forget. These government authorities have the right to do this because they're giving you the money. And that's why I keep saying the best thing you could ever do is get yourself really, 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 really sovereign, really sovereign. And I can remember doing some research on becoming a licensed financial, services license last year. I paid a lawyer, got some advice, and by the time I finished, I thought, there's no way in heck I'd do this. This is a waste of money. And all it means is most of the stuff I teach people, and I can't teach them on anymore, so I can't do most of it anyway. So it was quite funny. I just realized that it wasn't even necessary, provided I was willing to be a financial educator and not recommend investments. I thought, well, I don't want to recommend investments. So, and like I was telling someone the other day, I said, how many people do you know right now who work as massage therapists and they're not registered? They said, many. I said, yeah. I said, you can call yourself, like I call myself a integrated financial and tax as a protection specialist. I mean, it's a high sounding name, but because I'm not saying I am an accountant or I am a lawyer, I'm allowed to do this, So I just say to people, well, obviously get your own advice. But I was talking to a friend of mine who's a chiropractor who's quite smart as well. She made the same research and she agreed with me. She said, I could just set myself up, as an integrated healthcare facilitator. I know at least a few people who do that kind of stuff, and they're not, they just do it. The issue that, of course, they've got is that, you can't obviously turn up at APRA and get yourself insured. So you have to find alternative ways of getting insured, and you have to decide in certain aspects of your treatment you may have to relinquish. I, for example, had to relinquish my estate planning practice by walking away from being a lawyer, but I just thought that's fine. So I couldn't do wills anymore because wills was a black and white legal advice, but just about everything else, So the APRA, or the Australian part of the TGA, I can remember the TGA actually at one stage there was an outcry. They incorporated themselves offshore. And who owns them? That's a good question. But actually incorporated themselves offshore to avoid lawsuits because they were getting so many. So these are all corporations. They're not government. This group here, I've been trying to find out who owns it, and of course I can't, but I have worked out one thing. They are actually a corporation. I just haven't been able to find out where they're registered yet. And maybe a good researcher can find out for me. But they're registered somewhere. They're some kind of corporate group. And they're a private corporation. That's what I've worked out, or a quasi-government statutory body. And then what they do is say, if you're any one of these, podiatry, pharmacy, you've got to register under them. So, but I always just laugh, about actually learning to think outside the box and find clever ways to actually get around the law and things like that. So chiropractors board, same kind of thing, registered by under APRA. So many people are under them. Now, I'm not saying do this lightly. I'm just saying do your research. I can't give you legal advice. So if you go ahead and say, Warren said, but I said to do this. No, I did not. I'm just saying, look into this for yourself. I'm not a pharmacist myself or any of these people, but look into it yourself. I did this with financial services license. I paid lawyers. I got legal opinions myself to confirm my own opinion, and they all agreed with me, but I could do this. So I was like, perfect, provided I stayed within certain things. So, if you choose to walk away from this, no doubt there's certain things you have to relinquish doing, but you'll be very surprised at what you can do and what you can do to assist people. You'll be very, very surprised. So main thing with these corporations is that they're chartered and they're kind of like a government privilege or things like that. And they're separate legal entities, and they're generally for profit, so to speak. So as Bastiat says in the law, when plunder becomes a way of life, men create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and a moral code that glorifies it. And that's exactly what you're dealing with here. Exactly. Like, can you think of a better way to make money than to set up some kind of regulatory board? You get everyone to come and register underneath this for the right to give medical treatment or the right to give financial help to someone. And then say, unless you go through my thing, and then you get like credibility through that one. And then everyone starts to think, oh, I want to go see a licensed doctor, or I want to go see a licensed chiropractor, or whatever else. For me, it's simple. I just want to see someone who can fix my problem. I don't care. I find very rarely do I meet a doctor who can fix my problem. Occasionally I come across them when I have a health issue. Sometimes I find chiropractors who are pretty good. Sometimes I find people who aren't registered doing anything who are really good. It's really about solving the problem. I find most financial advisors, as most of my clients tell me, are absolutely useless. And the reason why is because when you sign up to become a financial advisor and get licensed, you've got a million things you can't do. You've got a whole lot of compliance you've got to meet. And you got your insurance, professional indemnity insurance, telling you what you can and cannot recommend. Like, you can't recommend people go into cryptos or into gold and silver too easily. You know, you got to talk about funds and all this kind of stuff. So I'm really just hitting to challenge your thinking, and really just think all these things you think you have to do, really look and ask yourself, do I have to do this? Because these are the webs of the matrix and the attachments that are actually holding people trapped into the system and holding you trapped into the matrix or the web. So it's basically a transfer of force by law can be the most dangerous thing in the world, as Bastiat says. And government is the great fiction through which everybody, endeavors to live at the expense of everybody else. You know, it's, the insurance companies own everything. Exactly. So you set up the system that licenses people to do shit. You then say, and we'll give you the insurance that gives you security to do shit. And then, and then we're also going to set up a system where you do your searching to find information, aka Google. And and we'll license you to be a lawyer, or we'll license you to do this, or we'll license you to be a real estate agent. I mean, you've basically got the whole society by the nuts. And that's what we've got right now. And so we go, bingo, we've got everyone completely dependent on our system now. We've got everyone dumbed down and really stupid, dependent on our medicines, dependent upon this. Bingo, bang, let's strike and let's take control. And that's what's going on. And when you think of it like that, you go, okay, that's not very pleasant to be in, and that's pretty yucky, but okay, at least I know the ugly truth. And it's better to know the ugly truth than have a sweet lie. That's always been my rule. You know, it's better to have a sweet, an ugly truth than a sweet lie. So life, liberty, property did not exist because men have made laws. On the contrary, its laws came about to protect life, liberty, and property. So Sashi says it's mind-blowing. So, it's interesting. When I first found this out, Sashi, I was excited, and then I got really depressed for a while. So, when law and morality contradict each other, the citizen is the cruel alternative of losing his moral sense or respect for the law. Unfortunately, most people are losing their fucking moral sense. Like, people who are generally relatively decent people have now turned into complete coercive, manipulative criminals. I mean, I've got people I know who are health practitioners. I mean, when you start saying you're going to have to get this medical procedure to be my client, I'm like, you're despicable. You know, that's just terrible, you know? But people lose their moral sense. People lose their respect for the police. I mean, by and large, I like soldiers in the army. I like cops. I think they do a good job. But some of the things that cops are doing on the East Coast is like despicable. So this is why bad laws are a real problem, as Bastiat says, like a real problem. So there are people who think that plunder loses all its immorality as soon as it becomes legal. I cannot think of a more alarming situation. So when you look at the law with Bastia, just another quote from Bastia, it's absolutely necessary that this question of legal plunder should be determined, and there are only three solutions of it. The few plunder the many, which is what we're in right now. What was happening before now was everybody plundered everyone else. I remember 3 years ago saying, I live in a society of absolute swindlers. I mean, people are this is the most dishonest, thing. The internet, everyone's scamming everyone. Everyone's doing this. Everyone's overcharging in business, things like that, Nobody plunders anybody. That's the better way to go. I mean, common law, life, liberty, property works well when nobody plunders anyone. Everyone charges a fair price, gives a fair service, and does the right thing by each other. But what we've been living in until a couple of years ago was everyone was just plundering everybody else. So now you've got a situation where governments are starting to plunder everybody else. you know? So the law says, see, from Frederick Bastiat, see where the law takes from some persons that which belongs to them to give to others which does not belong to them. See where the law performs to the profit of one citizen and to the injury of others, an act that the citizen cannot perform without committing a crime. Abolish this law without delay. So when a significant sector of the population considers itself to be oppressed, it is just two means of regaining its rights: revolutionary means and legal means. So this is why legal is always the best. Unfortunately, if you don't get it by legal, you've got to find a way to be revolutionary or whatever else, you know? So things like that. So, and the biggest problem you got right now is you have a society right now, but it's actually very scared of this virus. And one of the things I warn people who are what I call awakened, and generally remember, awakened people hang around with awakened people. So most of you would hang around people who think like you do. It's human nature. But that leads you to a misguided view of people. Most people I meet are actually quite scared of this virus. That's what I've noticed. And I mean, it's as crazy as it sounds, but they're really scared of this virus. And so there's one group of people who are actually mandating it because they're scared of this virus. There's another group who are mandating it for insurance and legal liability reasons. And there's another who are doing it just because they're scared crapless of the government and want to fit in. So you've got all these different things playing out right now. So, yeah, they walk among us. Some mothers do have them. Yeah, you know, you just got some people who are really, really scared and really believe this stuff. And, yeah, it's just going to take a really strong mindset and to realize, unfortunately, there's times in societies when inferior people, you know, come to power. And when you've got inferior people are in power, there's a scripture in the book of Psalms in the Bible. It says, the wicked walk among us on every side, you know, when they're vile men in control of the land. Something, words to that effect. In fact, I'll just get it up. It's a really good little quote. So, yeah, let me just grab it up. So, yeah, what it says in Psalm 12, it says, the wicked walk on every side when the vilest men are exalted. So that's kind of what you're dealing with right now. So vile men get exalted. So what are the common law rights and things that can actually be done and the way you can get mentally strong to stand up in this warfare? And yeah, Helen said this week, I've been finding all my like-minded friends here in Sydney. Absolutely. I think you're going to find a lot of people really, really, really step up and start to join together and build a much more integrated community. So Shirley says, I actually taught this at our energy reading clearing webinar on Sunday night, Shirley, but the word pharmaceuticals comes from the word pharmakeia, interpreted as sorcery. So yeah, no, absolutely. The word pharmaceuticals comes from the word sorcery and from poisons, basically using drugs, medicine as poisons to manipulate people's energy field. So, yeah, we've got all that stuff going on. So when you understand about the basic life, liberty, and property, the first thing to realize is it really does start in you and how you think. It really does. Like, you are the one that's got to think life, has got to think liberty, and got to think property. So, and it starts by you doing that with your friends and people that you know around you. Like in business, for example, that's why I make sure that I charge really fair prices. I do what's right by my clients. I make a promise, I keep it. And if someone tries to manipulate and take advantage of my generosity, I'll kick them out very quickly of my life and remove them as a group. We regularly fire our clients, you know, ones that we feel are starting to, you know, take advantage of generosity and who don't act, and then who kind of, you know, give a shit. So life, liberty, property is that. It starts with you doing that, like valuing your life, valuing your liberty, valuing other people's liberty around them, valuing their property. Like if you go to their house, you know, valuing their property. If you join someone's Facebook group, really value the rules of their group. If you join someone's Telegram group, I can't believe how many people join our Telegram groups and just flagrantly ignore our rules, you know, and make no attempt to understand them. I mean, one of my favorites, I said, was in our City Awakening Telegram group, some nitwit joined our group and then walked up, and she did some post of a big petition and made it the pinned post of our group. I mean, I instantly removed and blocked it. Like, not even, and I was just pissing myself laughing. I said, you have to be the most narcissistic person in Australia to do crap like that. So yeah, and just people like that. And then coming on, and when I've said very clearly, don't share, petitions and don't share that stuff. I'm not saying that if you want to do all that stuff and go to protests and do all that, go for your life. But that's not what we're doing here. We're doing different stuff. And then people still ignore it. So I just go, okay, out. And yeah, relationships should always be fair exchange of energy, Janet. That's common law. That's life, liberty, property. People think common law is, oh yeah, now I've got all these rights, so I can now turn up and do whatever I feel like. No, it's actually quite the opposite. You notice that the more you learn common law rights, you become much more mindful of respecting people's rights. You become mindful. You become different in your relationships. You respect your partner's sovereignty more. You respect your family's sovereignty more. I mean, I had a family member the other day who, they said to me they were really, really, grieving, and they were going off, and I heard them going off like anything at their family members because they were taking the jab. And they said to me, have you got any guidance for me? I said, do you really want to hear it? They said, yeah. I said, well, do you want them to respect your choice not to do it? And she said to me, yes. I said, well, then you've got to do the same for them and respect their rights to go and have it. Really respect it. Yeah, you can give your opinion, just like they can give theirs to you, but do it respectfully. I said, all my pro-jab friends, I get on really well. We've got good relationships. We respect each other's rights, we talk about it, and we leave each other to our choices and go from there. As soon as I don't feel that's happening with me with someone, they're out the door, I've got better things to do than hang out with, coercive, disrespectful idiots who don't work in fair exchange. So, all fair exchange, all relationships are fair exchange. If you've got a marriage, it should be fair exchange. If you've got a relationship with someone, it's fair exchange. A business partnership is fair exchange. With government, it's fair exchange, things like that. So that's what common law is, just getting back to this. Unfortunately, we lived in a world where people have been plundering one another, okay? So we plunder one another, we plunder the government. Many people I meet cheat on their Centrelink, they cheat on this, they cheat on the government with this, they cheat on their taxes. And yeah, look, I'm all for tax minimisation. I do all kinds of legal tax minimisation. But most people I know are absolute frauds. I wouldn't trust most people as far as I could throw them, So it's just important to realize sovereignty starts by you getting strong ethical standards and strong things like that. So some of you know that this was a song which, when I did my common law training years ago about the common law known to man, that everyone should know. Common law, by the way, comes from pure common sense. That's where it first started. This was the one here. It's like a child who doesn't know their common law rights are vulnerable to addiction, coercion, divorce, and suicide. So most of you grew up without knowing your common law rights. You probably grew up with parents who in some way coerced you into stuff. They made you do stuff you don't want to do. They forced you to go to school when you didn't want to go. They made you do something that you didn't like doing. They taught you to be a nice boy or girl. They taught you not to be mean to someone and to kiss Aunt Mary when she wanted to. Most people have been trained from the cradle to their 20s on how to basically completely give up their rights to their people around them. Most people have got no idea, on that because they learn that. They get taught, I know that girl was horrible to you and she screamed at you and she abused you, but that's not what good boys do. This is what I was told. Good little boys, they're better than that. They smile, rather than saying, just tell her to go and, just go off your face at it. I taught my boys to just absolutely be empowered and be sovereign. And none of them are really vulnerable to any of this. They live very, very free lives, an abundant life, even with school. I've said to them, my youngest son, who's been a bit of a slack ass, I just said to him, I can't make you do anything. And I said, I don't really care if you don't do anything in school because I didn't like school either. But if you get in trouble, mate, you got to deal with it, not me. If the homeschool moderator loses their crap at you, you're in trouble. And of course, he then craps himself and goes, I don't want to get in trouble with him. I said, I'm not going to rescue you. So then he starts getting creative. So the best way to be common law is teach the people around you to think common law and make people responsible for their choices. I do this with, my partner. I do this with, business partners and my various business partners and things like that. I do that with all these people. I do that with my kids. I teach everyone around me to do this, and we respect each other's rights, but make them accountable for their choices. So that's the basic of common law, is making people and being accountable for your choices with each other. So the maxims of law, these are 10 maxims of commercial law that I'll definitely go through more when we do our event. There's 10 of them. To go through all of these will take some while, but I'm just going to quickly mention 3 of these ones. The law cannot compel performance. That's one rule. It has to be voluntarily consented to. That's why it's very interesting how they're using the coercion, but the way they're doing it so cleverly, like saying, well, you can do it if you're not wanted, but if you don't do it, then you can't do this. Every law must have a remedy. That's another rule of the common law. There always must be a way to redress the remedy. So if you do something wrong with your law, if you do something wrong or you break a law, there is a remedy and a way to get around it. And here's a very important one to realize, especially at this time. He or she who leaves the field of battle first consents by default. So doing nothing or staying silent is deemed acceptance. And this is one of my biggest concerns of what's going on right now, is that by people giving into coercion and getting, it's actually going to be, it's deemed acceptance. The fact that you agreed to do something by coercion doesn't change the fact that you are weak, but you were too weak to stand your ground and do what was right for you. You were just too weak to do what was right for you. So the best thing you could do is anyone around you who's faltering, who's being really thrown by this whole situation, is to strengthen people around you and build community and be strong to do what's right for you. And for some people, there can be a smarter way. Like I was telling someone in my family who's really concerned about their family members, I'm saying, well, there are actually some vaccines that aren't mRNA, like the Nova one and the Valme, which are, although still not ideal, they're a lot better than the other ones. And, there were much less adverse reactions in the true statistics on the trials, much less adverse reactions. So I said, it's worth, doing research to find other solutions and things like that. So Jay, can I get a copy of this to show a friend who's not online right now? Absolutely. You certainly can. We'll be giving it out. So the UCC connection is a really good one because Howard Freeman, he writes about understanding the difference between common law and civil law, life, liberty, and property. And he says the common law is the law common to man. And any law which is not common law, and a good example, and the way to know the difference between civil and common law is this. Anything that involves a state or the government is not common law because the state or government is not actually a person, it's a soulless entity. So if I steal your house or steal your car from you, that's a common law offense. If I lock you up in a house, that's a common law offense. But by contrast, if, for example, I drive too fast on the road, that's not a common law offense, that's a civil offense. And I can remember I won a court case in 2012 exactly on this, and I completely bewildered the prosecutor because if you actually go and look at speeding fines or anything of these fines, you will always find there'll be either a weird name against you as a plaintiff in the court documents, or there will be the name of a real person. And in Queensland, it actually said Sergeant Nigel Bowman versus Warren Black. And I just got up and I was like, well, can anyone actually tell me who Sergeant Nigel Bowman actually is? And they were like, well, he was an officer by the camera. But I'm saying, but what did I do wrong by him? I said, I'm presuming this is a civil law offence and not a common law because there's no, unless, because I don't actually know what I've done, anything wrong I've done by Sergeant Nigel Bowman. And in fact, the magistrate started to grin in that particular case. And I think he decided just for the fun of it to go along with it because he knew I was right. And it was absolutely funny to watch them get absolutely messed up in their head as I was going on doing that, So I just basically said, well, you know, if Sergeant Nigel Bowman if I've done nothing wrong by him, like I haven't deprivated his liberty, stolen his property, therefore, the only reason he could be the plaintiff against me is because he owns the roads or he's got some authorised authority. And you actually realise the mechanics they go through to try and hide the fact it's civil law. So we're operating under a commercial martial law. So people who are like, oh, my God, they're born in martial law, state of emergency. Hey, guess what? There's been martial law in place for a bloody long time. Howard Freeman actually says in America, martial law has been in place since 1938. And I'll just actually show you, and I'll show you, if you actually read Howard Freeman's stuff and go here, the UCC connection. So I'm going to put this link in the chat, and I'll be talking about it more in our live event, but this is just really interesting. Howard Freeman explains that in 1938, well, after the Great Depression, when America went completely bankrupt, like completely 100% bankrupt, the issue was, does America get foreclosed and all of its assets get given over to the Federal Reserve Bank or what? And so it wouldn't alarm the people. He explains in 1938 how the judges all got together with the lawyers and said America's now bankrupt. And you can read this here. He said, because basically what happened was in 1938, they agreed. They said, look, rather than bankrupt, what we're going to do is hand the legal system over to the bankers and the people who we owe the money to, and hence public law came in, or public policy, which is basically a form of civil, martial, or admiralty law. So that's what we're actually dealing with. And look, there's all kinds of different stuff, and I really try and avoid getting too caught up. I don't like, as many of you know, getting caught up in stuff that doesn't work in the real world. Like, you know, there's various clues like the flags and various other things. And the fact that America, the federal United States, is different to the United States. There's a lot of different things he explains. In Australia, it's all very similar. The Commonwealth of Australia, the state of Western Australia is different to the Crown of Western Australia. There's a whole lot of different things that they've actually done. The main point, though, is to understand that you're dealing in that kind of system. And why is it important? Because, as he said, the common law doesn't work all that well in the Australian or American courts, because by and large, it's been superseded some time ago. And they just give the illusion to people that it's still actually there, while secretly they're operating under a corporate system. So that's why that's really important. And I found when I understood that, I started getting a lot of victories. And as I was sharing, for example, the pharmaceutical board is all part of the civil corporate system. That's all it is. The medical board, same deal. Chiropractors, same deal. Financial services, same deal. Tax authority, same deal. And when you understand that, you start to realize everything works by consensual contract. That's how it works. So who's blown away by this, by the way? Anyone going like, holy moly, holy froghead? You know, anyone? Yeah, a couple of people. So, yeah, look, the more you understand this, it's just mind-blowing. You realize the whole thing, you know. It's actually holy shit balls. Yeah, no, when you start to realize it, it's really, that. And you just got to understand what's going on. And I believe that it's starting to build something different. There's so much more to this. Like I said, I'll be discussing in our event, because this is like hours of teaching and things like that. And when you actually understand that a whole new system needs to come out of this that's completely separate from this. Completely. Yeah, the police and state governments are certainly corporations and don't work. In fact, from 2019 in Victoria, all the police changed their colours at the end of the year. Don't know if anyone saw that. But the same thing happened in parts of America, everything else. Basically, World Army Police. That's what I found out from that. So it's just realising you've got this civil corporate takeover that's taken place. And everything. So basically, the key words in statutes, resident, that means thing identified, person, not person. So you're identified as an object. So even the word resident makes you an object, so to speak, you know? So that's why, like I said, like a dog, you know, sterilise you, vaccinate you, microchip you. That's what I tell people. So here's one for you to really get you thinking. A license in the definition is this, okay? A license is the permission to do something which is otherwise isn't illegal anyway. So it's permission to do something which is otherwise going to be breaking the law. That's a license. But like, is it illegal to get married? No, of course not. It's not illegal to get married. I mean, if I want to go marry someone, is that illegal under common law and under God's law? No. One of my friends, when I was running a church, 13 years ago, said, "Can you marry me?" I said, "Yeah, no worries." So I married him under common law. And my friends will giggle, my kids giggle, and they go to me, "So you actually performed the marriage to him?" And I said, "Yeah." They said, "Well, you weren't licensed." I said, "Well, I don't need to be licensed. I mean, pastors can marry people. Is it illegal for me to help people with their money? No. It's illegal for me to use their terminology and claim that I am a financial advisor and give financial advice under their things. Absolutely, But so I just call myself, I'm a financial educator. I help people become empowered and be sovereign. Driver's license, same thing. Is it illegal to drive around on the roads? Well, not really, but they've got everyone, into a driver's license system. That's a harder one to get out of, by the way. Obviously, that's a much harder one, and I don't really go into discussions on that. I don't have the answers to that one at all. But the submission to regulatory board is one obvious one. If you're going to be submitted to a regulatory board, so to speak, you want to make sure that I don't have any problem doing it, provided their laws are fair. So my church and my higher consciousness church is registered with the ATO and the Charities Commission. And I've got no problem because they give me everything I want. If they changed all that, then of course I would reconsider it. So is it all about refining, your sovereignty or whatever else? So many lawful rights that we actually have when we really, really get back to it. So to finish off, I said I'd keep this to 90 minutes. How do I, what are some tips to maintain your boundaries and keep your mental health good? Catherine, where is your church? It's online. It's City Awakening. Look, seeing as people are going to ask this, if you go on Facebook, The Law by Bastiat, by the way, I'll just give you this link here. So you've got this, but I'll show you how you can find it. Yep, so that's The Law by Bastiat. There's a couple of places. There's a Telegram group and there's a Facebook group. So this is the one here. This is where you can join it on Facebook. If you prefer Telegram or you're happy to join both, that one there, that's the one there. That's our spiritual awakening group. It's designed to awaken people to their sovereignty, their power, and their freedom. That's the basic purpose of it. And Telegram group. Okay, I'm just going to get the link for everyone. Okay. Yeah, so here's the Telegram group. So I'll just give this to you here. Oh, yeah, no, we're pretty into spiritual warfare. We're doing heaps of stuff around that. So that's the group, So, yeah, so what we do, it's more higher consciousness stuff. It's not really religion, so to speak. It's more, like I said, higher consciousness. For those who are saying that, no, I'm not. I think most religions are stupid, if you want my honest opinion. It's more just teaching and bringing all the best principles of all the faiths that we really happen to like, and we bring them all together into a series of principles. So that's what they are, just to be clear, because I appreciate that many people have seen really dumb, silly churches and things like that. And I think most churches are ridiculous. I don't like them one little bit. So church is a word that gets us the license, the privileges that we need. And it's a word that people can understand. And like I said, we really do have a very much take the best of all of the Bhagavad Gita, the various teachings, the teachings of Dr. John D. Martini, Wayne Dyer, Eckhart Tolle, the Bible, various other books, and bring them all together. So that's just giving you some ideas. So the reason we do it is that having some kind of spiritual foundation or faith is really important at this time, and things like that. So yeah, I agree, Frank. Yeshua connected human to being not. Yeah, Yeshua, in fact, never ran a religious organization. If you actually read about Buddha, if you read about Yeshua, Joseph Smith, even the Mormons, none of them actually started any religious organizations. They didn't do that. All of them were just guys who turned up and taught their stuff. Maria Woodworth Etta was the same kind of thing, just got up and taught her stuff. Dipper Ma. Many of these great spiritual teachers, men and women who turned up, just turned up and did their job. It's their followers afterwards who deified what they were doing and turned it into the religions and things like that. So that's where a lot of that actually happened, So that's basically that. So tips for energetic boundaries. So the root of suffering is attachment. I think that's my favorite expression out of everything. The root of suffering is attachment. And that's the way that most people, suffer the most, They suffer from their attachment, basically. People, we're attached to our family, we're attached to our job, we're attached to our status, we're attached to our money, we're attached to that partner we're with, we're attached to our way of life. For me, attached to my Pilates, at one stage, and having to realize that, well, if my instructor, bans people who don't get the jab, which she's pretty much said she will, then I've got to be okay with that, So any kind of attachment or thing we hold on to is what's going to cause the greatest grief. So the best way to preserve is just everything that you realize you've got to give up. Just give it up, let go, and kind of be okay with doing it. That's the best thing to do. Just, just to do that and let go. So the root of suffering is attachment, and I couldn't agree more. So Buddha's Four Noble Truths: life is inevitable suffering. There's a cause to our suffering. There's an end to suffering. The end of suffering is contained in the Eightfold Path, which is what he does. So James Allen, the circumstances which a man encounters suffering are the result of his own mental inharmony, which is very true. Yeshua said, don't love the world or anything in the world. So in other words, anything which you're holding on to in society around you and the way of life. This is what I shared yesterday, but many people found very encouraging, because when you actually read what he's saying, it's really, really good. He says, blessed are they which are persecuted. In fact, I'll reword it in a way which I find relates more truly to the original translation and not what the Bible says. The original writings was something like this. Blessed are those who are persecuted and really attacked for doing what's right within their own truth, just doing what's right. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people, society, social media shall revile you and persecute you and say all manner of evil against you falsely for the sake of the truth and for what you know to be right. Rejoice in that day and be really glad, for great is your reward in heaven, or in the kind of in those higher frequencies and the higher mind, for so persecuted by others who are prophets or people speaking the truth and warning before you. People don't like to be corrected with what they're doing. Blessed are you when men hate you and separate you from their company. So if people are separating you from their company and you're losing friends, partners, jobs, anything, but you're doing what's right for you and you're really doing that, it's really blessed. In other words, it's a good feeling to do what's right. I mean, I love it when I do that, when I kick out idiots from our group. I love doing that. I love it when I speak my truth and stand in it. And I walk away feeling good about myself. And I loathe myself when I don't do that, I loathe myself when I walk away and don't do that. And yeah, Marek, our biggest attachment is to our bodies. I mean, I naturally would get paranoid about my health. I'll admit, I used to get very scared because I had many years as an asthmatic as a child. I had very significant autoimmune problems that ended up with fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, and RSI, which was just plagued me through my 30s and and late 20s. I mean, a really, really tough period of time. And when I did all that, and it's only recently I've completely 100% in the best health I've ever been in my life, but it took me a lot of work to get there. So yeah, it's a big value for me, a really big value. And I know how easily you can lose your health just like that. So doing what's right for me with my health is very easy. And I've also been in appalling relationships, and I know what it's like, to be in a relationship that drains the heck out of your energy. So yeah, I'm really mindful about it. That's why I really don't like attachment. I don't even like, the attachment to marriage. I like what Osho said. You're better off just to focus on connection with someone, or people that or different people you really connect with well. Whoever shall save his life shall lose it, but whoever loses his life shall save it. In other words, those who let go, who try to hold on to what they've got, will lose it anyway. Those who willingly let go of it will tend to get even more of it. So, okay, so moving forward in summary from that, so the biggest lesson that is giving you there, so Ali, is that because you weren't following your truth, bad health. Oh, look, Ali, there's so many reasons with my health, like so many reasons. I'd grown up, I'd taken every vaccine under the planet, and, in my first 30s of my life. I used to eat like absolute, shocking stuff. I didn't hardly exercise properly when I did. I had numerous back injuries. I had car crashes. And I wasn't living my truth even remotely. I was just completely living in a church that I didn't agree with everything they were saying. I was completely in a family situation where I was clashing with my parents all the time. I was giving up my power to just about anyone and everyone around me. So yeah, I ended up going through 10 years of solid psychotherapy to really learn to find my power and energy work and all that kind of stuff. So it was a big part for me. It wasn't like I woke up and became a sovereign individual. I was actually quite the opposite. I was quite weak for a long, 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 long time. So yeah. So this is why, in a way, I just say to someone the other day, I said, I can really feel for what people are going through. And that's why I do these webinars, because I said, I'm fortunate. I spent the last 20 years learning all this stuff and going through it then. But for many people, you're all doing this now, this year, when it's much harder and you're at the worst of the time and things like that. So this is the time, in summary, really do things that preserve strong mind and get yourself mentally strong. Like learn this kind of stuff, learn the common law kind of stuff. Come along. If you really want to learn next level, come to our common law and mindset event that we're going to be doing on the 18th of September. It's going to be a one-day event in person in Perth, or live stream and watch the recordings, or just come to the live stream live and be there all day. But yeah, we're going to be teaching all the stuff about common law, the stuff you've heard today in a lot more depth. We're going to really go into this and look at ways to really practically, step up and use it day to day in your private life. I'll be quite open with that there, and things that I do in my life and how I use it. We'll be teaching about, breaking out of all of the sabotage beliefs that we've got to really break out of that Babylonian, energetic matrix that goes back to the City of London. So it's really about helping you to break out of all that and free your mind, like the matrix is, like free your mind. So yeah, you'll be hearing more about this event. You'll be seeing some emails come out around about them, things like that. And yeah, Tracy, I love your honesty to say it as it is. Absolutely, absolutely. So I like to tell the truth. And I agree, Shirley. Religion has enslaved women and made men into God, and the world has fallen into darkness. Yeah, look, correct religion or spiritual practices really honor both the masculine and feminine, and realize both of us have our divinity in our different roles and our different purposes. I love the feminine, and many of my best mentors are great female shamans, and some of you would have seen Shazar and Tahaja who turned up. So I love the feminine. I really like the priestesses, and I learned tantra for a number of years under a great tantric priestess, and a few others. So the feminine has a powerful role in the spiritual evolution of society, as does the masculine. And we've had periods where one gets favored and one gets favored. And what we really want now is to see both get favored together. So any questions or that people would like to ask, or comments that you'd like to make, things like that? Okay, questions. So, Drew, when is your next event? It's happening on the 19th, hang on the 18th of September, Drew. So, yep, Diana, keep it there. I might just actually check. Just I'll answer the questions in a minute. I was going to quickly see if we got the link. Give me a sec. Okay, hi everyone. Yep, so with the event, the link will be coming out. Stay tuned. My team says it's about to be announced. Janet says, I was musing this morning, the true and essential work of all religion is to recognize the divine image in everyone, to mirror things correctly, deeply, and fully. Yeah, look, it's religion, as Ken Wilber says in his Religion of Tomorrow, or Claire Graves in his book Spiral Dynamics of Tears of Consciousness, says correct religion or spirituality is inclusive and understanding of all faiths and their different roles, and brings the best of those principles to bring awakening. It's not meant to be this either or, evil, not evil. It's just not what it's about. So common law only taught the live event. There's probably others who do it, Anna, but yeah, I'm mainly going to be teaching at an event, really going into that. So we'll be doing regular Wednesday night webinars like this leading up to the event. And you're about to get, and then it's going to be in 17 days' time on the 18th of September on the Saturday. Hopefully that those of you in Perth will come live to the event. It's great to meet some of you in person. Maya, so under corporate rule, is there any remedy to be had through the courts? It's very difficult. You have to virtually expose the courts being under corporation, and they'll generally stop you straight away, as you can imagine. You have to really know what you're doing to go that path. I have known people who've done it successfully, but I can count them on one hand, very few people. So very few people. Should we be concerned about the bill in Parliament where I can access our social media accounts, computers? Well, I think they probably can anyway. That's kind of how I've seen it for a while. That's why I like Telegram at the moment. It's fairly well encrypted. I've spoken to IT people and things like that. So yeah, you've got to really just set your computer up and make sure you're really well protected and things like that. That's how I'll be doing it. Drew, is the event virtual? Yes, it's going to be live streamed. Like Drew, there's going to be a face-to-face component, but it will be live streamed. And then also for those who can't come to the whole day or only for part of the day, there'll be the recording. So everyone will be getting the recordings. Diana, thank you for your wisdom. I appreciate that, Diana. Thank you. So Tracy, I am a health practitioner and I believe that to be mandated for it. Yeah, I'm sure there's a good chance that they will actually do that. I'm sure they will do that. So I would be, yeah, look, my honest opinion is that the only way around it really is for health practitioners to actually, because they've got to stand up with revolution and look at forming an alternative body. That's the answer, and really looking into it. That I can't see any other way myself. So I believe that, what I believe is a mixture of energy work. That's why we do our Sunday spiritual work and warfare and energy work. There's a lot I've been taught in the mystery schools and in shamanic schools, and I found it does work. And we've been able to use it successfully in WA and many places. But you've also got to take some practical financial action and finding ways around it. And I mean, I've been doing plenty of that. So, yeah, I think an alternative registering body needs to be the way to deal with it. And something that's got credibility, but it's got a good board of doctors and people and things like that. So, okay. Well, thank you, everyone. And really great to see you. How to join the Spiritual Sunday group. If you join that City Awakening Telegram group, link which we gave Zoe, which I'm hoping that you did. Yeah, you'll be hearing all about those Sunday ones there. So hang on, there's some questions in Q&A as well, apparently. So let me just have a look at those. Tread, just in regards to census formed, I signed no person's presence on the night, but still getting requests to do it. Yeah, look, I don't know. They tend to be, yeah, look, I would, if there's no person's presence, I would just be writing and saying there's nothing present, you know, that's what I'd be doing if there was no one there. Shirley, can I email you? Well, the best thing to do, Shirley, is join that City Awakening group and, yeah, just kind of mention whatever you want to ask or whatever else. But that would be good if you join that. So that would be great. So, Jen, is there a way to amend the health emergency laws to only have certain powers if death rates are over a certain percentage? Well, what you're really asking is there a way to change the whole system and get these guys out? Well, yeah, that's going to take a fairly big step. So, yeah, it's going to take a radical change on all layers, all levels, everything of that kind. So, yeah, we do have Telegram. Of course, we do a lot of our City Awakening one on Telegram. We'll be posting this in our Global Wealth Club YouTube channel. You'll find it. So our Global Wealth Club YouTube channel, or City or the Awakening event, I'm not sure, but you'll be getting an email about the recording and where it's going to be. I'm hoping it's right, Ed and James, but yeah, just yeah, making sure that you'll be getting an email with the recording and giving you a link to it so you can watch it. So, okay, everyone. Well, thank you very much. Loved having everyone here and great group of people. Really pleased to see how many people are, waking up and, thinking outside the box and ways to deal with things. So, awesome. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Need to kick the habit that my mind is breathing.